Hey folks, this is Kalani. Quite a few interesting things have happened this week. Exploiters have been shown the banhammer once again. We might see some new loot options for PvE content sometime soon, and there are a handful of new interface options to help you take control of your game. So let's break down this week's news and see what's been happening. Before we jump in, be sure to pop by our live stream sometime over at twitch.tv/KalaniTV. We stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, and we always love chatting with you wonderful folks, so I hope to see you soon. Now, perhaps the most interesting piece of information we got this week relates to some potential new looting options at endgame in Shadowlands. In a recent article by PC Gamer, game director Ian Hazacostas provided us with some interesting insight into how loot has been working in Shadowlands specifically. When asked how the team thinks the expansion has done so far, Ian said, "One big topic of discussion has been the way loot works in the Shadowlands endgame. We significantly reduced the rate at which players earn item rewards, but at the same time also stripped away randomness and tried to give everyone more clear goals to pursue and control over their progress towards them. When it comes to PvP itemization specifically, we're really happy with how that's playing out, but we think we can do more to make the experience of running dungeons and raids feel more satisfying when you don't get a specific item you are hoping for." The discrepancies between PvP gearing and PvE gearing has definitely been felt at the top end of play. If you're not too sure why this has been brought up a few times, basically if you only run dungeons, you can gear up relatively quickly to begin with, but your maximum reward caps out quickly as well. You can't get higher than item level 210 pieces of gear from running Mythic Plus dungeons outside of the weekly vault loot, which can be up to item level 226, but that's only once per week, so the activity itself becomes less rewarding when you can no longer benefit from the 210 item level loot, which is fairly low in the grand scheme of things. It also becomes increasingly more time consuming to get upgrades from dungeons after you gear up a bit, because you only get 2 pieces of loot per dungeon split between 5 players. If those items aren't an upgrade, or they're not the item you're looking for, it can feel very frustrating when you walk away from a day of dungeon grinding with nothing to show for it but an extra 35 anima. However, when you look at rated PvP, there is a very steady progression path that leads up to item level 226 loot, and even item level 233 weapons. As long as you keep playing rated PvP and your rating increases, you have a clear goal to increase the item level of your gear, and that progression path ends at the same point as mythic raiding. If you want to get some of the best gear in the game right now without raiding, your best bet is actually to get stuck in with rated PvP rather than grind out mythic plus dungeons, so PvP has definitely ended in a fantastic place. Now, the argument with the raid is a bit different. You can get some of the higher item level pieces, 213s from 8 bosses and 220s from the last 2 bosses on heroic difficulty, but the raid only gives you 10 chances per week to get loot, and that's if you're clearing the entire raid, which obviously the vast majority of players are not. With only 3 to 4 pieces of loot per boss, depending on how many people you run with, gearing up from raiding has become significantly slower. If you mythic raid, you can go up to that 226 and 223 item level, but mythic raiding is significantly harder when compared to dungeons or PvP for the same gear reward, and you still have the restrictive weekly loot locks to deal with. If you are only mythic raiding right now, you actually won't gear up very quickly at all unless you get incredibly lucky with boss drops. We found that the players who are doing more outside of raid are gearing up significantly quicker in our guild group anyway, versus the players who just log on to raid. Those other types of content and our raiders taking part in them, specifically rated PvP, that's bumped up our gear level significantly more than just mythic raiding ever could, and I think the reason why we've been able to progress as well as we have this time around is simply because people are gearing up outside of raid. If absolutely everybody in our raid team was only relying on mythic raiding, I don't think we would have got as far as we have. Now, the dev team seems to have taken notice though, so the really exciting part about this is what comes next. PvP seems to be doing okay for itself from what Ian said, and they're mostly just interested in adding something in to make dungeons and raids feel a bit more rewarding when you don't get an item you're looking for. This immediately made me think of badges or of Valor Points. We've had a few different systems over the years at this point. Whether it's a badge system or a point system, they all boil down to collect this currency from dungeons and raids and then spend it on what you want from a vendor. It's kind of funny that PvP has landed in a good spot gearing-wise when they finally decided to bring back the PvP vendors, isn't it? I'm not too sure if they would just straight up introduce Valor Points back into the game, but the wording of Ian's statement makes me think they're considering something incredibly close. How else do you provide a more satisfying experience in dungeons and raids while not getting the loot from those activities? Unless they think an extra 35 anima is satisfying, they must be talking about ways to work towards a piece of loot, right? Whether that's a currency, a badge, a token, a collection of random monster parts that you turn into some crazy monster part collector, who cares? I think whatever the implementation, it's going to boil down to more access to gear upgrades from those types of content, and to bring it up to the point where PvP has found itself. I personally think we'll see either Valor Points or just a renamed Valor Points that work in the exact same way. But what do you think? What could the dev team introduce to make raiding and dungeons more worthwhile, even if you don't end up getting gear from the runs you do? I would love to hear your thoughts and theories. Feel free to drop them in the comment section below. In other news, quite a few players may have started this week's adventures in Azeroth with something a little unexpected, a ban notice. Yes, it's that time again where a specific exploit is found that is very clearly an exploit, but plenty of players figure they can get away with exploiting it anyway because hey, it's Blizzard, right? Exploit early, exploit often is the phrase thrown around far too much, which is a bit weird, really, because it doesn't make too much sense anymore. Sure, there have been problems in the past that were fixed and overlooked without significant repercussions, but for the last few expansions, whenever a bug or exploit has been found and taken advantage of, Blizzard has swung the ban hammer almost every time. They're pretty ban hammer happy, I think. If you're not too sure what happened this time around, basically, players were endlessly farming Stygia in the Maw. That might seem like a really weird thing to exploit, but Stygia actually allows you to buy sockets for your gear and to buy upgrades for your conduits. So these players were able to upgrade their conduits and slap sockets on gear without having to worry about the usual daily limits on Stygia farming. The whole point of the Maw zone is that you can't stay there forever. The Eye of the Jailer is specifically designed to limit your playtime in the Maw, whether that's killing monsters for Stygia, killing rares and bonus objectives for Stygia and Rep, or completing daily or weekly quests for the same rewards. Everything you do in the Maw is supposed to progress that Eye of the Jailer to enforce daily limits. Some players found a very specific monster in the Maw that did not contribute to the Eye of the Jailer debuff, but still dropped a small amount of Stygia. So they did what any smart player would do, they reported it and moved on. Oh, who am I kidding? They farmed the bejesus out of these monsters, knowing full well that unlimited Stygia gains was against the entire design of the zone, and I guess they thought they would get away with it. Enter the ban hammer. The punishment this time around is kind of interesting, because while players did receive temporary suspensions, that wasn't really the big part of the punishment. Depending on how badly a player abused this exploit, they received one of these three punishments. A 1-day suspension and -1 to all conduit levels and exploitive Stygia gains removed, a 3-day suspension and -2 to all conduit levels and exploitive Stygia gains removed, or a 7-day suspension, -3 to all conduit levels and exploitive Stygia gains removed. So basically, the Stygia was removed. That's got to hurt. That means taking advantage of this exploit would leave you at a net loss no matter what because of your time spent exploiting, yielding no results. The ban on top of that is pretty annoying, not being able to play for a few days, but the main thing to look at here is a potential -3 level on all of your conduits. That means if you had all of your conduits at item level 226, which is rank 7, they would all be downgraded to item level 184 at rank 4. That absolutely has to hurt, and could knock down an exploiter's conduits to below where they were before they started to exploit this Stygia farm in the first place. That's pretty huge in terms of punishment for an exploit, but I'm glad Blizzard isn't tiptoeing around this time. So when you hear about a potential new exploit in the future, because I'm sure a few will pop up again, whether it's to farm a crazy amount of anima, or Stygia, or any other new currency in a future patch, play it safe, don't take part, don't exploit. Chances are anything you gain from the exploit will be removed, and you'll get additional punishments on top of that. If your account ever gets banned, by the way, you won't be able to get into any of the betas, so if you ever want to actually do anything interesting with World of Warcraft testing, don't get banned. That's definitely going to help you. Exploiting bugs is definitely not worth it, short term or long term. And then to round out this week's interesting tidbits, there are some new user interface options that might be useful to you for a variety of reasons. Now, the main problem these new options are supposed to address is motion sickness issues that apparently quite a lot of players struggle with, especially with some of the new visual effects presented in Shadowlands. But even if these effects don't give you any issues, these settings could be useful if you just want to get rid of them anyway. So if you pop into the interface settings, go down to accessibility and find the motion sickness drop down menu. If you select either of the two options that include reduce camera motion, that will eliminate two specific screen effects. The first is the wispy anima tendrils that appear at the side of your screen while you are dead in any Shadowlands zone. So if that screen-wide effect has been annoying you for whatever reason, this is one way to get rid of it. The other screen effect that this will remove is the one you get when you enter Venari's Refuge in the Moor, the smoky, wispy effect around the edge of your screen that persists while you're in the refuge, which I imagine might annoy some players after a while. If you want to get rid of it, now you know how. So whether this will help anyone who has been having motion sickness problems in Shadowlands, or if you just want to turn off those specific effects, I hope these new settings are useful. And that's all we have for this week. What do you think about the potential of dungeons and raids becoming more rewarding in the future? What would you personally like to see added to dungeons or raids to make them more satisfying to play through? How do you feel about the ban hammer being swung yet again? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to come chat, hang out, maybe run a couple dungeons with us, you can find us over at twitch.tv/KalaniTV. We stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, and watching the stream and coming to say hi is one of the best ways you can support the channel right now. And if you ever wanted to be included in the long list of names at the end of every video, a subscription on Twitch is the easiest way to make that happen. You get a free sub to any Twitch channel if you have Amazon Prime too, so be sure to take advantage of that. A big thank you to everyone who has subscribed already and to our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, well, now you know how. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.